All right, family, it is noon on Wednesday, so that suggests that it must be time for Smart Church. As always, I want to express my gratitude to those of you who are with us today, joining us, those who have always been constant and consistent as we gather in this midweek, midday study. It always amazes me how we started out that this would just be a month-long adventure, and here it is that we are headway into our second year coming together in this hour for a few moments to draw closer to God by understanding what He said in His Word through our context, through our way of knowing the world. I'm just so grateful that we come together with an attitude that we're going to learn together, that this is not all about looking for the shouting moment or looking for the time that we can agree, but we really come here to spread, to advance our knowledge. So thank you for your spirit and your attitude of wanting to learn. Shout out to all of you who are visiting. You wondering what this talk is all about? You are in the right place, because I need to tell you, man, this Smart Church is fire. It is our time that we come together and we don't just parse verbs, if you will. We don't just try to understand what the Greek and the Hebrew may mean, but we're looking at the socio, the political, the geopolitics of the time in which these particular scriptures are written. In fact, we just narrow it down to, we want to know what it meant in the world. We want to know what it meant to the one who wrote it and to the one who received it. And then we are able to properly apply it to our lives in the 21st century. So you hear, so thank you so much. And for all of you who are watching this thing on the rebroadcast, especially those of you who are watching the rebroadcast so that you can prepare for the 7 o'clock Smart Church Amplified. Thank you so much. We appreciate your effort, your diligence, if you will, to make sure that we are all prepared to come together on this evening. As always, and you probably saw it in the chat box already, we come to this space with our scriptures, with our sacred scripture, and with our note-taking apparatus. It's important because we want to be able to go back and look at what we learned, what we studied together, such that the same spirit that spoke to me can speak to you in your time of private devotion. So that's how we roll. We try to keep it concise because I know this is the middle of the day and somebody's lunch break. So let's jump right into it. If you will, please join me in the book of Psalms number 8, verses 4 through 9 calls our attention. Psalms number 8, verses 4 through 9. And by the way, shout out to those of you who have given me ideas for this venture that we're calling Smart Church and our new approach to Smart Church. I really appreciate it. All of it is in the queue. We're going to do our best not to skip anybody's ideas, because I want to learn what you want to learn. And so we're putting it all in the queue and trying to take it almost on a first come, first served basis. Some of the topics will require a little more study. So we'll have to push it down a little bit, but we're going to get to it all. Please continue to give those ideas about what we can study together as it relates to God through His words, through His word. Please don't stop giving the ideas, whether it is straight scripture, whether it's a theological question, something happening in our contemporary culture right now, whatever it is, man, let's come together and talk about it. So here we go again, Psalm number 8, verses 4 through 9. I'm going to read from the New International Version. What is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. You have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. You made them rulers over the works of your hands. You put everything under their feet, all flocks and herds, and the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea, all that swim the paths of the seas. Verse 9, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. That's the reading of God's holy and unchangeable word. And so our topic for today, both at this noon hour and tonight in the amplified version, is hashtag Mitch Please. Hashtag Mitch Please. And we say it like that because those of you who are on the social media, there is no way that you have missed that hashtag that's been floating around on social media for the last week or so. And it is based on a statement that Mitch McConnell made, the GOP senator, the Corona Caucus leader. Mitch McConnell made when the Senate failed to pass a voting rights bill. Ain't that a trip? They are still trying to decide whether who they will allow to vote in this country, the so-called democracy. And so it was blocked by racist nationalists. And I said what I said, and I'll say it again. It was blocked by racist nationalists, the Voting Rights Act. And when Mitch McConnell was asked about it, he said, check this out. I know you already heard it, but it's still funny to me. He said, African Americans vote at the same rate as Americans. Wait, what? African Americans vote at the same rate as American. Now, he came back and tried to clean it up and say that he misspoke. Some are saying it's a Freudian slip, but my grandmother would say he just said what's on his mind. He said the way he said it the way he thinks. And so I want to come back. You know how we roll. We got to come back and counter that speech from a human with what God says. So let's go at it. Let's get in. When you look at Psalm number 8, do you remember sometime back I taught you, I think it was in the worship experience, and that was at a time when we were all coming in the sanctuary together. And I taught you that as it relates to the Psalms, never read past the preface, right? Don't just go straight to the verses. Where there is a preface, that is that description that describes the Psalm before you get to the verses, always make sure to read that, the preface part of the song, if you will, because that's going to give some explanation. I like this one. You may want to check it out. The preface of Psalm number 8 says, to the chief musician, set to a Philistine lute, right, instrument, or perhaps to a particular Hittite tune, a psalm of David. I'm going to say that for you again. The chief musician, this is the instructions for the chief musician, set to a Philistine lute, or perhaps to a particular Hittite name, a psalm of David. No doubt that this particular song is about and dedicated to the Lord, Jehovah, as David, that we are told the writer, as David knew him, right? But check the description. The description says that it was set to the tune, or maybe even placed in the same key as songs that come from Philistine and or from the Hittite culture. Why does that even matter? Because you Bible readers remember that the Philistines and the Hittites were enemies of the Hebrews. But David spent time among both groups. It got me because on the one hand, it says that David was obvious. David, the Hebrew David, the man after all God's own heart. David, the one who would not kill Saul because he recognized that King Saul was anointed by God. All of that stuff that we say about David, right? But this same David was obviously influenced by the cultures that were around him. And so I bring it out to say, with your saved self, with our Holy Ghost dancing selves, do not be surprised when we find ourselves influenced by our environments. I think I just said something to somebody, right? You've got to be careful. We have to be careful about environment, because environment will influence and impact the way you think. That's all right with me, but you got to admit that this is kind of funny, right? You know, David must have really caught it. Some people must have really dragged for David, talked about David like he was lower than something, that David would dare take them old Philistine or Hittite songs and bring them into the temple of the Lord. But now hold up, wait a minute, because some of us know that that kind of looking down one nose, that kind of trying to destroy one's efforts is still real and prevalent in the church. That criticism, if you will, you know I'm right about it. Those of you who when that song came along, talked about the Lord taught me how to fight and pray, and all of that rocking and all of that clapping going on in the church, and how the elders said, y'all bringing that them barroom songs in the church. Think back to the hymns, right? The hymns were, many of them were simply putting the Lord's words over barroom songs, right? And you know they were dragged. And just about 20, maybe 30 years ago, people were losing their minds when Kirk Franklin took evangelical theology. Man, I will preach that another day. Took evangelical theology and placed it over hip hop rhythms and beats and melodies, right? And we lost our minds. And so it happens that we see where this comes from. I would suggest to you that I wouldn't be so worried about what the melody or the rhythm sounds like as much as I worry about what the message of the song is. I think I said something that you might want to write down there. I would be worried about the message rather than worried about what it sounds like. Okay, come on, let's go close. Let's go further. Look at it again, because there's no doubt that this song, Psalm number 8, is about God the Creator, right? This song is meant to both acknowledge and to honor the Lord for his creative activity. You can check out verse 1 and verse 9, almost like bookends, if you will. Verse 1 says, O Lord, our God, how excellent is your name in all the earth, who have set your glory above the heavens. See, this kind of recognition can only be generated not by what we have heard from somebody else, not by what has been passed down, and all of that is good and has its place, but this kind of recognition is generated from and comes from people who have seen and experienced God for themselves. You've heard me mention this Old Testament professor, theologian, Walter Brueggemann. Walter Brueggemann points out that the manner in which God, this Psalm recognizes the manner in which God not only speaks, but he makes things happen. God speaks to make things happen. And not only so, right? But God, when he speaks, it is to organize. in such a way that it nullifies chaos. Ooh-wee. When God speaks, it not only creates, right? He calls those things which be not as though they were. But God's speech organizes such that chaos and confusion is nullified. Perhaps that's the reason that some of us can use that colloquial term, I finally got my life together. It is because God spoke, right? God spoke to you, or God spoke about you, right? And that which was disorganized, that which represented chaos, now you can say things are in order and they are running like they're supposed to run. Do I have any witnesses there? I know this is Smart Church, but I hope that somebody will chime in and put some form of agreement as we continue to work through this. Now, look at it. Because according to our creation narrative, right, or our rendition of the creation narrative, because there were other cultures with their own creation narratives, but ours suggest that humans were the center and the pinnacle of God's creation. But not only so, God assigned humans, that's you and I, right, assigned us to be regents. That is, God expects that we should rule. If you are taking notes, you'll want to remember, go back and look at again the creation story in Genesis chapter 1 and pay special attention to verse 28. That's where it reads that God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth. Have dominion. That is to rule. See, what the Creator decided is that humans would be his representatives and exercise dominion as if God were present in the physical. Boy, that's good. What it says to us is that God expects that we should represent him to the earth, or to this earthly sphere. Get that down. Write that one in your notes. Get that down in your mind, your consciousness. What God expects is that we represent him in the earthly sphere. And when we say represent, what we mean is to bring God to the forefront, right? In all of the activities, in all of the interactions, in all of the conversation, in all of the moves, and all of the decisions, God should be at the forefront. One of the things that has bothered us, right, kind of causes a schizophrenia within us, is it is our natural proclivity to have spirit and body and soul, right, all acting as one unit. It is not until we met missionaries from Europe and various parts of the earth that we were told that you got to separate that. That's not true, right? And so whether we are, I'm gonna be facetious and say chopping wood in the forest, or whether or not we are cooking food to feed one another, making decisions on what to do next, or where to go, or what not to do, or whether to move or be still, all of that kind of stuff, all of that is God, or should be God for us, right? This is God's activities, right? Especially when what we do has an effect on someone else's life. This is God activity. That's why, especially in this session, I've been harping so much on appreciation for teachers. Man, if that is not godly, I don't know what is. Right? So God, we bring God to the forefront. Right? Now that's a statement for all humans, but can I tell you where it all got jacked up? And I probably should kind of move on a little bit. It all got jacked up when we decided that we would commodify stuff, when we would put a price on stuff. Go back and read the Genesis narrative. Look at how people lived, and what you will recognize, right? God gave it all to us. It was all for us. It was for us to share. But sooner or later, we started saying, this mine, and if you want to participate, you have to pay for it, right? That's when things became jacked up. When we put the material over the human, right? When making a gain, if you will, prioritized helping one another. In the minds of humans, the stuff took precedence over what God decided. When the stuff took precedence over a real sanctified life, then that's when you see these hierarchies come into place, right? That's when people started creating race. Race was created because Europeans understood that they needed slaves, it didn't start with African slaves, right? But they needed slaves to build their economy. Now they start building because stuff became more important, right? That's when we start saying that one group, no matter race or gender, was more important than another group, right? Because of the stuff. That's when you find this mess that we have today. People are fighting wars, right? Right today, right? Russia's thinking about invading Ukraine. Everybody's losing their mind. Is because we're putting the stuff over the people. That's why we see what we're happening today, right? Where especially, remember, Haiti took their independence in 1791, and in 2022, they are still frozen by the world. Nobody wants to do business with them because we put people over stuff. And it's not just about geopolitics. Don't fool yourself, dear heart, right? That's why you find that people hate others because they think that somebody has something more than they have. So we're putting the stuff over the people. If you think about it, sisters and brothers, that's why you see envy and jealousy, right? Envy and jealousy, because people want to like the highlight, if you will, the spotlight, the thing that they can see shining, right? But they don't understand the sacrifice that goes behind that, or that led up to it, right? And so you see in our world that people want the stuff. People begin to put a price on the stuff. And that's why you see and you hear what Mitch McConnell said, right? Mitch McConnell said this thing about, made this dichotomous statement about African Americans and Americans, right? Because they value privilege, they value power, they value being able to buy stock while they're making the laws for the stock. They value being able to decide how long they can stay in office based on what they think and feel. They value the money that they get from the big corporations, and so forth and so forth and so on and so on, right? That's what's at work. That's why McConnell said what he said. But the problem with McConnell's statement is not just about being American, right? But it's really about, if you're not American, then you're not human. And that goes back to what Sister Sylvia Winter said. Remember we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, Sylvia Winter and her statement that she found in the LA Police Department's reports, no humans involved. That's why McConnell can make a statement like that. So look at what our text teaches us. Come closer. We're still studying together. The text shows us, right, that we are representing God in this earthly sphere. But it's more than just having authority, and it's more than just receiving applause, right? People telling us we're special. No. In a real sense, what it says to us is that we are God's agents on the earth, right? That means that we act in God's name. We act in God's name, right? So this is far more than just keeping the ordinary rituals. This is far more than seeking signs and wonders that are closely associated with the ontology of the church today. In fact, I would suggest to you that religion, right? Religion has ordinarily been given to us through those filters in order to make us passive. When fact is, if we're reading this text and understanding it, religion, our faith, and our understanding should make us active or proactive and not passive. We still together? See, it is that, right, in our demeanor, the way we move in this world, that we represent or that we represent God. It's our conduct. It's the way that we manage our time and our energy and our resources. It's the way we impart wisdom. That's interaction with one another, right? The way we impart wisdom and knowledge to one another. It's about our dispositions in times of challenge. The way, are you going to act like your hair is on fire, or are you going to keep your cool and and critically think your way through it? It's the way we conduct ourselves in the presence of and in association with people from all kinds of beliefs and all kinds of cultures. See, the true measure of our representation, you already know where I'm going with this. The true measure of our representation of God is Micah 6 and 8. You knew that. It's Micah 6 and 8, right? He's already shown you, oh man, what is good. Do justice, love mercy, walk where God walks. That's how we represent God to the world. Let's walk through a little bit more. Check it again, because what you see happening here is that verse 4 asks some questions, and I don't know, we don't know if they're rhetorical or if they're unpretentious, but what we can recognize is that when the writer says, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, human beings that you care for them, right? The real question, the simple question is, why? Why do you care about us? Why do you stick with us? Why do you keep giving us mercy and grace? That's kind of a sobering self-inflection, right? A sobering way to kind of sit and think about things. I wonder if you've ever been there. I wonder if you say yes or no if you care to, but where you sat down and really thought about, man, why does God stick with me? Why does God stick with us? When you consider the way we twist things, we make things deform, we don't believe sometimes when we should. We allow all manner of things to influence us that should not, right? And sometimes our only pitiful little excuse can be, but I'm a good person. How many times have you heard that, right? When they know they are wrong, but I'm a good person, as if to say we don't deserve what we get. I'm a good person, right? When God said to us, right, let us do good to all, especially to those of the household of faith. And our attitude is just as nasty, and we act like we don't see people in need and all kinds of stuff. And then it was called on the cop, but I'm a good person. Oh, that's not you, that's me. Or what about this one, right? When God says, right, be tenderhearted and be courteous, right? Don't return evil for evil or reviling for reviling, right? But on the contrary, bless. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 9, right? And we know that sometimes we act just as crazy and we do things that God say we shouldn't do, especially if we think somebody did us something, right? Oh, I'm going to get you. I will get you. Right? What is that saying? Then when it happens, you won't have to ask the question about who did it. I want you to know I did it, right? Right? And then God calls us on the carpet and the Spirit moves to convict us. And but I'm a good person. And so the encouraging thought in all of this, right? It can be discouraging when you look at it through that paradigm, but the encouraging thought is that God keeps investing in us, right? And God keeps giving us confidence, and he keeps his confidence in us, right? Even though God knows, he understands us. from the very beginning. He knows our thoughts even before we know our thoughts. Go back and read Psalm 139, verses 1 through 4. Psalm number 139, verses 1 through 4. And even though God knows all of that about us, God still honors us. And how does he honor us? It's right there in verse 5. Check out verse 5 where it says, you have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. Check that out. First, I want you to recognize that it says that God crowns us. That's so good, because this is not about, right, an ornament, right? But it does say to bend. Crown means to bend in a certain direction. God bends us, or we are bent toward in a certain direction. And in what direction? Towards glory and honor. Now, we just taught about glory not so long ago. And you remember glory means the heaviness in the atmosphere that's associated with the presence of God. I know that sounds really churchy. The heaviness in the atmosphere that's associated with the presence of God, right? So what we read is that God bends us toward a life that is characterized by the presence of God. God bends us, right? Gives us this kind of notion, this proclivity, that word again, to live our lives in such a manner that it demonstrates the presence of God. And you know, and I know, that it is the presence of God in our lives that drives away fear and discouragement and doubt. But it is also the presence of God that builds faith and courage and confidence. See, so this is the kind of thing that increases our faith, right? This is the kind of thing that gives us a new sense of being in the world around us, when my life demonstrates that God is real. I know there's some amens right there. I know you whispered it under your breath. We cool, because I know you know about it. Not only does he bend us toward glory, but he also bends us towards honor, and honor represents royalty. Oh, you got to get that. Glory, the presence of God. Thank you for putting it in the chat box for us. Glory, the presence of God. Honor, royalty. And I know that sounds kind of churchy too, right? But what it suggests is that God never created us to be second rate. You're not built like that. That's why you struggle when you want to settle for second rate, right? When you want to settle for that's good enough. That's why your mind turns somersaults, if you will, because you're not built like that. You're not created to think and be like that, right? So when we don't allow ourselves to be measured by the wrong paradigms, then we don't fall for the trap that says, right, that you are somehow less than something or someone else. And then we don't let other people measure us by their paradigms. We measure ourselves, and we allow God to measure us by his standards. Look again, because it says that we were made a little lower than angels. That's what the text says, right? Which really, and I've translated this for you before a number of times, which really said that God made us a little lower than him. We are little gods, right? Like, you know, Big Jimmy and Little Jimmy. In our house, I tease Angela and Azaria, Big Angie and Little Angie, right? Same thing, right? You are made a little lower than your Father, than God, right? And so what it suggests is that God holds us to a higher standard. One, because we know better. Two, because his standards and his expectations for us dictate that he should hold us to a higher standard. I'll leave you alone But I want to tell you that what Mitch McConnell said does not even make sense, because you overflow. You can't be contained into other people's definitions of who you are, who we are, right? Their thoughts about us can't be contained. Even if you think about it, logically, it doesn't even make sense. See, he used the word American, and the use of that term is hypocritical in and of itself, because the word America is taken from the Latin word Amerigo, which means worker ruled, right? Of the people is what we say. And you and I know that our Congress is bought and paid for, that we really live in not a democracy, but sort of a plutocracy, where a few at the top benefit and control most everything, right? And we don't need to go into that. You already know that. And the aristocrats, if you will, and their corporations really make a mockery of this so-called American democracy. And so to use the term American in the first place is hypocritical. Secondly, to say African American is a misnomer, right? When you consider, sisters and brothers, that when we were brought to these shores, these people came here with thousands of, and I say that on purpose, not these slaves, these people came here with thousands of cultural experience and thousands of languages, and yet our ancestors found a way to bind themselves together and to overcome everything that was thrown at them. And so this idea of African American, I would suggest to you, is not only hypocritical, not only is it a misnomer, but it really is only used, right? Is only used for the diversity and inclusion crowd of our modern day. I would tell you there is no accurate designation for who you are, for who we are. Even when they talk about Negro or black or Afro-American, right? When you use those terms, you're saying that you are some subset, and we are not sub to anything or anybody. I wish you'd write that one down and put it on your t-shirt. We are not sub to anything or anybody. What I've been trying to get you to see is we go beyond boundaries. After all that you've been through, all of the gifts and talents that you display, all of the wisdom that God has given to you, all of the knowledge that you are able to share with other people, after everything you've done to overcome what this world has brought against you, you can't be put in a box talking about a label, talking about a definition. You overflow. We're going to stop it there. I'm looking forward to sharing in the amplified version tonight of this idea of Mitch. Please, you're not gonna handle us like that. And so please join us tonight. We'll expand. Amplified means to make bigger and louder. And so I want you to be with us tonight, 7 o'clock, the same space. Listen, I need you to help me spread the word. Because the numbers, and man, I just talked to my doctor this week, my physician. I trust the scientists and the doctors, who said to me to keep doing what we're doing as it relates to virtual. And so please help us spread the word that for the month of February, we'll continue our virtual worship services. It's still going to be fire. You're still going to be uplifted and blessed. But we can't afford to come together and help this Omicron version of COVID-19 to spread. So help me with that one. If there are any other announcements, please put them in the chat box. Always a reminder that Dr. Angela sends her love. I love you too. Take care. Peace.